Hello, friends. It's Jim McCarthy with American Vapor Manufacturers, back for another scintillating installment of Shaping Vaping, our first episode of the year 2026. As ever, I'm joined by our co-host, Joe Gitchell from Pinion Associates. Happy New Year, Joe.
Thank you, Jim, and back at you.
We've got so much to get to. I'm going to give just a quick overview of what we hope to get to. I want to talk a little bit today about the big changes at CBS News, which I think you might agree, Joe, is covered tobacco issues among all the major, let's call it top tier blue chip news outlets. Probably covered tobacco policy historically and over time more, and had a bigger impact than any other outlet. And they've got a new anchor of their flagship news program who has covered nicotine vaping before. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're also going to talk about a big Wall Street Journal article on so-called sigfluencers and the reaction in the tobacco control community, or lack thereof. And we're also going to talk about the push in recent weeks by tobacco control about the notion of cardiac arrest, cardiac problem.
Like that review paper out of Europe. Okay.
Correct. And there's a bunch of other flotsam and jetsam too, which is all, hugely important. But I'll start with the results of our bet. Listeners will recall Joe and I had bet about whether FDA would approve any more, authorize any more safer nicotine products. I bet no. Joe bet yes. And in lieu of whiskey, I sent Joe this box of Titleist Pro V1s. There it is. Excellent. And I was glad to know that's your preferred agate.
I mean, and literally, I think I may have explained this, but and it speaks to how frequently I play golf. That I don't know when these are for, and I don't know if it's from the same. It looks like it may be a different golf ball customizer, but my standard personal identifier is for the ball to say Gitch.
Oh, okay, all right.
So there are lots of courses, or there are some courses where if you go in the lake or out in the woods, you will find some Gitch golf balls.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye for those in the trees at Burning Tree. So I want to just acknowledge to our listeners that Joe was right. However, like my alma mater, Notre Dame, we have a long tradition, Joe, of after we lose a game complaining about the referees. So I'm going to add my obligatory complaint, which is there was only one company. There was only one approval, and it was for remind our listeners the name of that product, if you can recall.
Well, I believe it was On Plus,
right?
Ultra, or On. I think On Plus from Helix and Altria.
Yeah.
And so yes, you could say I was barely right, and you were mostly right.
Yeah.
Because certainly I was more bullish that there would be more authorizations.
Right.
And I remain hopeful that there will be more, as I think that's the most viable path to bring order to this marketplace.
Yeah, there's one and one only. And it was a pouch product. Let's hasten to add, not a vape product. But I fail to see the hard basis for that optimism, Joe. I really do. I mean, I don't know. I admire your hope, but I struggle to gather evidence to support it.
Well, and this is, I should really pause and bask in the glory of actually being right.
I'm keeping the pick up. That should be our new homepage.
It's remarkable. But I think on this topic, there is wide widely held concern about the state of the current marketplace, with so much of it being met, the consumer demand being met by illicit products. And I do think that enforcement efforts are going to be part of that, but pragmatic officials with accountability and responsibility know that that's not going to meaningfully change a market where there are 20 plus million consumers willing to spend decent amounts of money. That's too big a market. And people are, so if they want to change the reality of that market, they're going to need to authorize more products and bring in legal products for consumers to purchase.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think in a logical and just world that
that might have a yeah.
Yes, but just yesterday, we'll be doing. I'll curtain raise a little thread we're going to do for AVM. Just yesterday, there was an oral argument in the Fifth Circuit in a case called Vape-tastic versus FDA, and we have the transcript, and we're going to be excerpting that. I expect that legal scholar John Adler may have something to say about it too. But in that oral argument, the Chief Justice of the Fifth Circuit was saying to the lawyers, "Hey, before we made our previous decision on vape cases, and after and all throughout, FDA has had what he called a de facto ban on flavored vaping products." And the government tried to say, "Oh, no, we've got, we authorized some, don't you know?" And the Chief Justice demolished that and said, "You can't tell me that authorizing, a dozen or so out of many, many, many hundreds of thousands is somehow, gets you around that." That is a de facto ban. And so they're pretty intent on that, it sure seems. And they also said, strikingly, that FDA did that, imposed that de facto ban in an unlawful way, which is to say, in order to make those rules, in order to apply the regs in that way, they had to go through the rulemaking process under federal law, and the FDA did not do that. Instead, they simply imposed it. What's more, they hid the rule book. You'll recall this is the same court that issued the
surprise switcheroo.
And they did the opinion about the wild goose chase. They quoted Shakespeare's etymology on the wild goose chase, and so they pointed out that what FDA is doing is unlawful, and that the Supreme Court decision, the recent Supreme Court decision in the White Lion case, does not restrict or inhibit them from ruling in that fashion or focusing on that aspect. And so, again, I hear what you're saying, and in a just world, I think your view would logically prevail. But the Fifth Circuit, which has studied this pretty closely, seemed to say that that's not the world we live in.
No, and clearly, because of the commercial opportunity, this is going to be a topic of ever more litigation, which is not the most efficient way to resolve these sorts of things. And I again hope that leadership in important places is prepared to say the demand for these products is not going away. It should be met by regulated products. And that doesn't square well with many interest groups who want none of these products to be available. But if wishes were fishes, or if frogs had wings, there are lots of aphorisms that would appropriately be used now.
Well, I'll tell you my own channel check on the state of the black market that you're alluding to is at a little 50 square foot vape shop at the corner of Lexington Avenue and 96th Street. and I am indulging today in one of their newest product, new innovative product, Joe, innovative consumer electronics, which is this one's called the Air Bar Mini. And you can't really tell, but it's pretty small. Here it is compared to your clients at Juul. It's even like more discreet and smaller than Juul. And the reason this is so popular, it was explained to me by the store. Their top customers are from one of the largest hospitals in New York City that's a block away. And a lot of the hospital workers and medical professionals use these products in flavorless, in neutral.
And is that what that is? Is it's unflavored?
It's designed to be discreet, small, concealable, and flavor neutral, so that you can use it in the hospital without being discovered. So that's the direction that the market is headed. But why don't we transition there? I think that's maybe a good. I want to point out. FDA's Dr. Marty McCarry was at the Consumer Electronics Show this week. And boy, he was excited with all the new kinds of products, Joe. There's a lot of innovation happening. It's really crazy what, when you have free markets, you know what happens? No one knows. It innovates in ways that cannot be foreseen. And so when the new products are shown each year, it's always quite amazing because no one can predict that. And here's Dr. McCarry, who's never worked in the private sector for 10 minutes in his life, bedazzled by, all the incredible innovations that are resulting that had precisely jack squat zero to do with him and his government colleagues. But notice what he says up top. The government doesn't need to be regulating everything. And he's talking about, in this clip, which we'll put in the thread, he talks about how FDA wants to accelerate the rate of consumer electronics and novel devices. Sir?
So Jim, are you finished with that?
I'll put a question on it. Help me square that. Here he is saying the government doesn't need to regulate everything. I want more consumer electronic products. Here's a consumer electronic products that's innovating every year, and he's outlawing 99.999% of them.
But so, not to be a pedant, or more than my usual pedantry, but he's focused on wearables and things that don't make clinical claims. If I understood that, it's not like I dug deeply into this announcement, but they were trying to differentiate between devices that were going to have direct clinical application and those that are more like informational. So you can see I'm a Fitbit user.
Right.
I don't think that's going to fall under FDA responsibility, but I still find it useful in lots of ways.
Okay.
A key distinction, is wearable. And yes, you can wear that Aero Mini, whatever the thing it's called.
Yeah.
You can strap it on your bicep or, tuck it in your belt. But its intended use is to be inhaled into the lung. And I don't think saying, well, it's also a consumer electronic is at all responsive to the reality that its intended use is to be systematically to deliver a drug into the body like that. It's not even, I know you're making this funny face and I understand.
I'm baffled. I'm perplexed.
So you don't think there's an important distinction between a product that you wear that gives you information and a product that you inhale upon and it delivers an aerosol into your lung?
The distinction is right in the PMTA application of your clients, in which they point out that this device is saving more lives than any other medical device on the market.
Through a regulated pathway.
Which is not occurring.
Well,
the gentleman on the screen is refusing to do it.
Where we do have agreement is that the regulatory process is not functioning in a way that is yielding best public welfare benefits.
Which
completely agree.
Which is precisely at odds, 180% opposed to what this gentleman is saying to the American public yesterday.
But I just don't think it's not a credible argument when you're saying that that framework should apply to a product that is intended to deliver an aerosol into the lung. That's just a very different.
Which do you think is better? Which product do you think is more of a benefit to public health? A nicotine vaping device or your Fitbit?
Oh, I think that's a different question.
Isn't that the key question?
It's a very I should go back to like, hey, put the golf ball back up. No. You are right, but that's an important where you and I are probably going to continue to be not looking at things the same way. Your response to that is, which one has a bigger opportunity to advance health? It's the vaping device. And then what should happen? And your point is, we should allow the market to deliver and innovate and meet consumer needs.
That's right.
And my response is, and we should have a regulatory system that has oversight and the right levels of control on that process, because it's not just a wearable that wakes me up in the morning or gives me data on my sleep, but is delivering an aerosol into my lung.
Well, let me put a macro question to you then. It sounds to me, what I hear you saying, Joe, is that your affinity for, how did you put it, state capacity, your affinity for state capacity is so dearly held that you're willing to see them spend years and years and years, decades, in fact, rejecting these products from the market so long as they retain that power. Am I misstating that?
I can see how framing it that way advances your argument. However, that is not. If I were content with these things, I would say, oh, I hope that, I wouldn't be placing wagers on the likelihood that more products are authorized. And so I think, and that I made a little note. I think that, and I'll try to drop this into the chat. There's Leslie Beenan, this cool, thoughtful writer on gratience is the word she wants to make the word of 2026, which is essentially not being a jerk and extending grace to people, and that we should try to do that more. It's a really thoughtful thing. Don't just laugh.
I'm laughing because I fall so short of it. That's so often. That's why.
Well, but that's why you're such a wonderful target for this. Is just think of the improvement opportunity. So that, but also this notion of nuance, that there can be things in tension with complexity. And as much as our minds want to try to categorize and simplify and understand, that drive doesn't dominate the reality of our world, which is full of complexity. So I think I can retain my hope for state capacity to deal with collective action problems in public health and expect it to do more to meet consumer demands to help people not smoke anymore.
Well, a listener might wonder, Joe, at what point or after how many years of them failing to live up to that aspiration would it take before you say, you know what, okay, I'm going to join Jim and Dr. McCary in saying that not everything needs to be regulated. I mean, and how long?
And so that is actually, that is a fair question for which I could filibuster or say that I'm not prepared to answer that, because that is a good and fair question of what is a length of time where until I would say, oh, I guess this effort has failed and we need to go to anarchy.
Well, you could call it freedom. Freedom's maybe a better adjective.
Well, that reminds me a great this cup from the
freedom's my second favorite. Okay, all right. The R Street Institute. They're great.
Yeah. So
love those guys. All right, join us, Joe. We've got a seat warm for you. There'll be no recrimination. We'll be thrilled to welcome you.
This is the nuance, though, of of like, well, what is it that Goldwater said about extremism in defense of liberty?
Extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. My man,
I'm not sure. So, but it's a fair question. I will commit to reflecting on that. But it's not. I'm not prepared to abandon now.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Maybe that's good time to pivot speaking of shifts and changes and latitude and attitude. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening at CBS News. As you know, CBS has covered tobacco issues probably more impactfully, to make up a word, than any other news outlet. The listeners will recall they were the ones that broke the story about the tobacco industry documents. And I think they also, if memory serves, way back before that, they focused a lot on the Surgeon General's report in the 1960s. They've really, had a bigger impact than almost any other news outlet. So they've announced a new anchor for the CBS News, the chair formerly held by the great Walter Cronkite, and his name is Tony Dokoupil. And
Dokoupil. Did you see the promo thing they did where he wandered around Grand Central and asked people, like he had a little placard with
pronounce my name? That's clever. That's clever.
I thought it was pretty good.
Tony Dokoupil. And you'll recall he has done in my view are some good pieces and some bad pieces on vaping. The bad was he did some terrible long form stories on disposables, and you'll recall he put the guys from, I think it was Puff Bar.
When they had their aviators on, was that
through the gauntlet, and photos of their Lamborghinis, and it was just complete agitprop bunk. But he also did a very lengthy, thoughtful interview, which we'll put in the chat, with one of my intellectual heroes, Dr. David Abrams from NYU School of Public Health. And they spoke at length and in a very thoughtful way about all these aspects of what's happening in tobacco harm reduction and the resistance to it. And that's something that I hasten to add, no other news outlet has ever done at that level, no national news outlet. And so that's an opportunity too. And the reason it's interesting is because Dokoupil, when he came on board, has said, and the sense that they're conveying is that they're going to no longer be as ideological, left-leaning as they were in the past, and instead are going to strive to be objective and neutral, and especially to listen to the voices of ordinary Americans instead of relying, as he put it, just as a default on cherry-picked, experts and elites. And that was music to my ears, and I hope that they can live up to that. That's the core promise of journalism, according to them. And what's more, the ratings for his first week on the air are just out, and guess what? Viewership is up 20%. I repeat, 20%, which in the world of broadcast news is a gigantic number. Now, maybe that's because the show just started, but seems to be a good initial indicator. And here's a tweet that I thought was very, very striking from my pal, Jan Crawford, who is the Supreme Court Department of Justice reporter for CBS News. And she has been, promoting Dokoupil as, and urging people to watch Dokoupil. She's been praising Dokoupil and urging people to watch his show. And notice here, when she put up her promo, many people responded, and Jan responded back and says, "Thank you for responding. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. I read most of the comments. I appreciate the constructive points. I understand your skepticism and anger, and I agree with it. We have to do better. Please notice the accountability. Notice what she promises here. Number one, we work for you. Number two, we report on the world as it is, not as we wish it to be." And we'll put this link in the thread, but if you scroll down, you'll see that she engages with many, many, many readers, even ones that have pretty stringent criticisms of the way CBS News has covered various issues. And what's so striking about that, Joe, is you almost never, ever see national journalists engage with ordinary readers and viewers in this way. And so I'm guarded, capital G, maybe all caps, guardedly optimistic about this shift at CBS. I know Jan Crawford to be a good person, and you know how sparing I am in praise for journalists, but I'm here to tell you, I think
sorry, that did make me chuckle. How sparing I am in my praise. Yeah, okay, yeah, continue.
But Jan Crawford, in my opinion, is one of the very best journalists in the country, and I commend everyone to follow her work closely. But I guess that for me, and here's my question: for me, the acid test of whether they can live up to that, one of them is going to be in how they cover tobacco harm reduction and nicotine tobacco issues. I took a look back at CBS News just using their search function, and they have done over the last umpteen, many years, an absolute fire hose of the most slanted, alarmist, scaremongering, inaccurate agitprop, just spoon-fed like a never-ending mimosa from the PR machine for tobacco control. And so if they can begin shooting straight on that issue, and again, I'm not saying rah vape. I'm not saying do a segment about what's the best flavored vape in the country or a ticker tape parade. What I'm talking about is balance. A balanced, objective piece. The same thing that Jan Crawford's promising here applied to nicotine and tobacco coverage. I'm guardedly hopeful. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are I'm like, where's my next dozen golf balls? Because here's Jim to kind of burn it all down.
Yeah.
People can be trusted, blah, 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 yeah. Saying, well, as long as the gatekeepers aren't total morons, maybe having some reliable source of knowledge, curation, and prioritization wouldn't be such a bad thing. And I'm like, well, hell yeah. Reform before let's at least give it a good try. I completely agree with you, however, that across and I put a link in for the highbrow misinformation Substack from last year from, I think that was Dan Williams, which is he's basically arguing that just because institutions get a lot of stuff wrong, the alternatives are generally worse. So I'm delighted to have you embrace that concept.
Well, did you miss the part where I said all caps guardedly?
Yeah, but I mean, I'll take it because this is better than the salt the earth, like the bulldozers. Oh. Joe, I'll let you drive the.
If you want to talk me into the view that it's too little, too late, CBS torched their credibility and abused the public for far too long. They deserve their demise, and I'll help hasten. You want to talk me into that? I'm all ears.
Oh, no, I'm not.
I'm ready. I would be very tempted to get on board that train.
That's your base, and it's a remarkable example of growth and like getting in touch with your inner human. But no, I think, but I don't know if you found it. I did a little hunting, but didn't succeed in the CBS archive in the wake of the Juul authorization back in July.
Right.
And Tony DeCopel on the next morning show, they had a bit in their show.
Right.
That was like 1 minute on good thing, bad thing.
Right.
And he said the Juul authorization, he used up his whole minute on that as the good thing.
Right.
And I'm like, well, now.
Right.
And it's a bit like, a jump cut, but, I'm desperate to have sources and institutions that I can trust because I don't have time to read all this stuff. I just burn out, explode, whatever. And since I only really have one topic on which I can claim some measure of competence, not sure expertise. Sometimes I say expertise, but I'm realizing actually, maybe competence. But when institutions get what I know right, it does lead me to give a lot more credence to them because on other topics, right? Peter Attia, the longevity expert, did Ask Me Anything in 2021. What, you got his book Outlive up there?
Oh, not only do I have it, I think it's signed.
It's signed? Oh my.
I am good buddies with signed better than by Atia. It's signed by the sorry, the camera's not picking it up.
Well, it's because you got the blur on. It's trying to keep your face in.
Oh, it's signed by the ghostwriter, my good buddy Bill Gifford.
Oh, really?
Yes, who I grew up with in DC, one of the smartest guys I know, and he wrote the book, and so I'm well familiar with Dr.
Well,
Atia.
that is awesome. We should talk about that. But the point is, when Atia gave his Ask Me Anything on nicotine, and I had a few notes, but I was like, damn, if this guy is willing to express this in the face of the conventional wisdom, then I probably need to listen to what else he has to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for folks who might be listening to our show, that nicotine coverage is an example of a litmus test. And to your point, what did you call it? The acid test? What is a litmus? It's not a what is the thing? Litmus? Is that what Panama is?
I think a litmus test and an acid test are the same thing. Is the same thing.
Because okay.
Well, let's put a fine point on this, Joe. So you and I both, I think, are sharing a certain kind of optimism here. So let's make a gentleman's bet, and let's figure out where we place the over under. How many days, weeks, or months until CBS does a story that covers tobacco harm reduction in a balanced and objective way?
Well, that's a two-parter, right? That's that they do it and by when. But I guess, okay, fine. I would like to think that, let's say by June 30, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? I saw they're going to Minneapolis tonight. They're going to broadcast.
I would give them 6 months. You want to say 6 months?
Yeah, I'm fine with 6 months.
I'm kind of with 6 months too. I mean, I don't want to take either side of that. I guess if I was forced to bet, I'd say they will not. But let's put a pin in 6 months. I'll put that in our calendar. We'll revisit this and we'll see whether or not they've covered it. And if they do another agitprop story, I'm going back to Burn It Downtown.
Well, but I guess if they do and by agitprop you mean unvarnished,
one-sided. Now a good question might also be, Joe, how did Dokopol's colleagues in the world of journalism react to his promise that he's going to, shoot straight and report objectively and engage with listeners and not cherry pick elite experts? Were they happy about that? Did they think, great, finally someone's trying to restore trust in journalism? Did they say, boy, like Joe and Jim, I sure hope he succeeds? No, they didn't. Let's take a look. This is an aggregator. Yeah, this is an aggregator of for the journalism world. CBS News has fallen, says one. That's a LA publication, The Wrap. Daily Beast, CBS humiliates evening anchor with awkward initiation ritual. Next one, the customer's not always right, especially in the news business. Shut up and listen, you peasants. The next one, you should be relying on experts. These people have studied the material. I don't want to get my information from someone who watches TikTok. Next one, everyone should go back. On and on and on. Major news organization implying that academics not a reliable source. My favorite one is the last one. This is talking about the head of CBS News. Barry Weiss launches jar of mayonnaise into CBS News anchor chair.
Well, that's certainly enlightening and graceful, full of gratience. Well,
what can we deduce from that sentiment?
Well, at least they're paying attention. But I would say go back. So I don't know if
these are like Spinal Tap reviews.
This is just a 2-word review. Look how print that.
That's not real.
The growth rate of this band can hardly be charted. Leads this reviewer to ask, on what day did God invent Spinal Tap? That may too.
Joe, this is what I'm talking about. Okay, these people are showing you who they are.
Well,
believe them.
So this is, as Dave Sweener loves to quote General Patton, when your enemy cedes the high ground, take it. And this goes back to my, I did reread that Jonathan Rauch Constitution of Knowledge book, which I'll put that in the chat too. It is so good. And I don't know if we've talked about this, but we probably have. I talk about it all the time. But it's really struck me of, like, he highlights that the principles that underpin the reality-based community, which we would aspire to, like, it's so hard. It is not the natural order of things to have a reality-based community functioning. And this sort of notion of jar of mayonnaise.
That's racist. That's racist.
I mean, it's just, I mean, I guess at some level you appreciate the candor that people feel comfortable expressing that. It doesn't make me want to trust them if that's their judgment.
Well, yes, that's been my refrain for a long time, as you know. Well, let's talk about trusting people. Here's an article that appeared in the Wall Street Journal this week, and it's got a glamorous photograph of some celebutante actress who I'm too old to know.
Is that Sabrina Carpenter? I think.
Well done, Joe. You got your finger much more on the pulse than I do.
That's me. Yep.
And it's the same kind of piece. Listeners will recall that the New York Times did last summer, which is about this phenomenon of what so-called sigfluencers and celebrities and social media stars glamorizing cigarettes. And this bothered me a lot, Joe, because I'm trying to put a fine point on how on my view on this, but notice how it says in the promo here, and it's in the article in the subhead too. Showing these glamorization of cigarettes worries anti-smoking advocates, says the Wall Street Journal. But you know what? That's not really true. That's not really true. I went and looked. Truth Initiative did a study that measured how often cigarettes appear in pop culture. That's a kind of analysis that tobacco control has been doing for many, many years, going back decades, about, there's, X percentage of TV shows have cigarettes in them. Fine. But they were the only one that made any comment on any of this. Truth Initiative itself didn't even really publicize that study, I hasten to add. They didn't tweet really very much about it, didn't put any lift into it. And the other ones, when the New York Times article came out, that one was even more brazen. Like, hey, this is super cool and hip. All the cool kids downtown are doing it, don't you know? None of them, not Truth Initiative, not Tobacco Free Kids, Vital Strategies, Bloomberg Philanthropies, anyone you want to name had a syllable to say about it, Joe. And the same thing is true in this article. I was waiting to see, oh gosh, maybe they finally spoke up. But if you look at the actual article, none of those groups are even quoted. I repeat, none of the major tobacco control groups are cited at all, and that the journal's saying, it worries anti-smoking advocates. Well, no, it doesn't. I mean, the real story there is that they don't care.
Well, I'm not sure that that's actually true, because I'm just looking at the article. Yeah. They quote a report from Truth.
Right.
And then they quote
Crosby.
Ollie Gans, who's a cool cat at Rutgers.
Yeah, they quote some academics.
Well, I mean, this goes back to this central question of the shared truth of the continuum of risk. And for lots of the advocacy community, that's not a truth that they're prepared, at least in my view, to get that close to, let alone embrace.
Wait a second. I'm not even talking about vaping or safer nicotine products. I'm talking about cigarettes.
But I think they're very corrected connected. Sorry. I think they're very connected.
Well, help me understand that.
If the advocacy community, which has now more resolved around being opposed to nicotine addiction in all of its forms,
right?
If they take the bait and say, "Oh no, we really we should be worried about all this stuff, but we really, really need to be worried about the fact that cigarettes are becoming more appealing for young people. Like that is a real concern." Then they're, I thought we were supposed to be worried about pouches and like how much nicotine they have and vaping. And, I think it could be argued that weighing in heavily, investing limited comms bandwidth and resources on cigarettes distracts from their main focus, which is on nicotine broadly and in the products that are predominantly used by young people, which are not cigarettes, regardless of this sort of chatter. That there are they can find people who are young who are smoking.
That's crazy. And you think they've actually sat around and thought about that and talked about that? Like, gosh, maybe we ought not weigh in on this cigarette story.
I don't know.
It seems to be what you're suggesting.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Well, is that your intuition?
That's my intuition, that they would any inbound, they would say, is this something we're really going to want to dial in? And what are the necessary follow-ons that come from that? So wait, are you saying we should be, because this Laura Cooper's smart, right? She's going to say, wait, which one should we be more worried about? Do you think they want to get into that discussion?
Well, notice too, they talk about vaping in the piece, and they kind of denigrate it as uncool. They quote people saying, "Oh, it's not cool. No one really likes that anymore," and so they trash it a little bit. But I noticed, who they did quote was Nancy Regotti, and I'm trying to pull up.
Yeah, she said cigarettes are dangerous. The nicotine addicts people, and then it's the smoke that kills them with heart disease, lung disease, and cancer.
Right. But you know what they didn't mention is that Nancy Regotti has authored multiple articles in prestige public health publications urging that vaping should be part of the cessation toolkit.
But that's not what this story's about.
Yes, it is. There's 2 paragraphs before that. They're talking about vaping.
Well, they are, but I mean, and you have much more expertise on these sorts of decisions that editors and reporters make on something like this. That did not strike me as either out of place or cut off, and invoking Cochrane and that sort of jazz would seem odd in this piece, at least to me.
My strong intuition is that if she were asked about it, Nancy Regotti might say something like, the way that vaping, nicotine vaping, has been anathematized has contributed to this uptick in the glamorization of cigarettes.
Well, yeah.
Well, let's take a look also about, there's one other thing I wanted to show on this. There's our good friend, and again, one of my intellectual heroes, Dr. Marc Siegel. I don't know if you saw this week, Joe, but he has left Twitter, departed Twitter.
Really?
Has moved to one of your favorite platforms, Blue Sky.
Really?
Yes. No explanation, no reason given, and I was a little surprised to see it because his tweets, for as forceful and assertive as they are, so far as I can tell, at least judged by the comments, have gotten very little blowback or hostility. In fact, most people are applauding them. I can only sense that it's because of other things he's seeing on Twitter that he thinks are offensive or beyond the pale.
Oh, you're saying you're not Marc Siegel, not the Fox News guy, Michael Siegel.
Michael Siegel, forgive me. Yes. Dr. Michael Siegel. Yes. Yeah, Tufts University has left Twitter. So we'll have to find his stuff on Blue Sky. But he had a post up that I want to show here.
Yeah, that was some brutal truth sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, notice what he says here in one of his most recent blog posts. He prefaces this. We'll put the link in the thread, but he prefaces by saying he's put a lot of thought over many years to the motivations of the tobacco control community and why they are so hostile to safer nicotine products. And here's what he says after years of reflection on this. The conclusion I've come to is that the primary reason so many of these groups are attacking these forms of nicotine use is that nicotine use that have few acute risks is precisely because they have so few acute risks. It's because they don't pose a tremendous risk to youth. It finally occurred to me, the reason these groups are attacking the nicotine products at the lowest end of the risk continuum is because they are at the lowest end of the risk continuum. It's threatening to the idea that people who use a recreational addictive drug should be punished for that decision rather than rewarded for it. Your thoughts?
So, and I read his posts with interest, and I'm not sure that I come down with a clear position. I'm a little, and this may be how much is operating in people's conscious reasoning versus their unconscious effective decision making, but I think that a lot of people that he's referring to do not accept the notion of the continuum risk, do not believe that we know enough to be able to declare that non-combusted products are dramatically less toxic. They're not.
He seems to be saying they're well aware.
And that's where I'm saying that I don't believe they are. And I think what more motivates them is the legacy of, it took us decades to determine how harmful cigarettes were. And there's so much that we don't know. And look at what these look at the heart like that, the European Heart Association.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Okay. Like, I mean, I actually, this may be an underpinning, is to say, oh my gosh, how can we criticize nicotine when it isn't associated with like really scary health concerns? We're going to look absurd. I mean, I think if that were the case, I'm trying to think.
Let's game out that hypothetical, Joe. If we had Matt Myers on a truth serum in the Pinning Associate offices, and he said, yes, it's true. I can't stand the fact that people use nicotine for pleasure. They ought to be punished for that. That's what's driving my antipathy. How would you then, if that were true?
Well, I don't think that's true at all, and I actually don't. But yeah, I don't, and maybe I should follow up with Mike on this, I don't think this explains it. I don't.
Well, you know who else thinks this is a good explanation? I commend this book to everyone. Is our friend of the show, Noah Rothman, whose great book last year, Rise of the New Puritans, dives deep into the psychology, the history, the undercurrents of this movement, and he comes to the absolute same conclusion. And it's one that I subscribe to, and my reasoning is not simply from what Rothman and Siegel's persuasion, but my lifelong up close front row seat to how these people think and operate. I'll remind you, my dear dad was a long time ultra left progressive columnist for the Washington Post, and all his friends and buddies were exactly these people. The Center for Science and the Public Interest and all of Ralph Nader's spinoff groups. And I mean, more tin hat wearing freakazoids than you could shake a stick at. My poor mom, Joe, would host dinners for my dad's students at our house, or like a potluck kind of dinner. And she was a Goldwater Republican, okay? Scotch drinking, Marlboro Red smoking Goldwater Republican. God in heaven bless her. And every one of these kids that walked in the door, the first thing they would pronounce is declare all their preferences. I can't use plastic utensils. I won't use paper plates. Does this have such and such ingredient in it? Is there animal fat in this rice? And it was, I mean, I don't know. I subscribe to the notion that this impulse is
Well,
there.
maybe back to my invoking the notion of nuance. I think one challenge of how polarized and moralized this topic has become is that we conveniently and subconsciously immediately lump groups into homogenized notions. I'm sure there are people for whom that my colleague Robin used to tell a story. It was something where she was working in nutrition stuff, and like one of her colleagues would like slap a bag of pretzels out of her hands to say, like, do you realize what's in those things? And Robin was like, it's a bag of salted pretzels. So like they're fine, but that's not all of any group is the extreme. So I think we need to leave room for complexity and nuance, and that there are people who do struggle with these issues in a more humane way. I'm not Gratians. That's the word of this is the Gratians show. I'm gonna love your thoughts of reading Leslie's piece. I think it's awesome.
We'll put a pin in it, because I could give a whole homily about whether that's actually humane or not. We'll pin that for another day.
Well, I know which one. I'm saying humane. I think, slapping pretzels out of someone's hands, that's not humane in my view. So just for the avoidance of doubt.
Indeed. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about. This was a clip from. This is an excerpt from a new paper that was in JAMA, and we'll put a link in the.
This was a news, because the leading medical journals will have like news sections. So they did a pretty long piece. Right. Yep.
It's about nicotine pouches. It's about nicotine pouches. And it has some good quotes in there, such as friend of the show, Jonathan Folds, who says, quote, public health somehow has to get around the idea that you just need to quit on your own or with a med, because quite a lot of people are interested in using a less harmful nicotine product like pouches and reducing their smoking. But at the same time, Joe, this same article, I mean, you thought it was a pretty good piece, and you're right. It does quote some, thoughtful THR voices, but it also, I was troubled at how it frames nicotine vaping. So on the one hand here in the second graph, they say the idea of using alternative products to quit smoking isn't new. E-cigarettes have been shown to be more effective than nicotine replacement therapy for smoking cessation. Okay, sounds good, right? But then they say, last sentence. It wasn't too long ago that e-cigarettes quickly caught on among younger users under the guise of a less harmful alternative to smoking for adults. Now, which is it?
Yeah, which is fair.
Which is it? And what's more, that the piece also quoted, it also hyperlinked up top in the article, this absolutely execrable article that appeared in the European Heart Journal that was published just last month, entitled "Nicotine and the Cardiovascular System: Unmasking a Global Health Threat." Cue Beethoven music. Dun, dun, dun. And I want the hour back that I spent reading this thing. It is an absolute garbage barge of wrong information. And I want to put the question to you, because you have a much vastly deeper knowledge than I do about these kinds of studies and the academic thinking. But they really seem to be putting a lot of emphasis lately. It's been going on for a long time, but it's strong emphasis lately in the cardiovascular effects of nicotine, and trying to use that as a lever to move regulatory processes.
And so you're asking me, like, why would that be?
Well, I guess my question is, how could I put this? It strikes me as deeply intellectually dishonest to be talking about the cardiovascular effects of nicotine, which do exist, but then conflating and implying that it can lead to heart attacks and strokes and other grave medical calamities, when in fact that's not what happens. And they're seizing on that. They're framing it that way because it gives public policymakers and regulators and others who, as you point out, rely on them for information gatekeeping, the excuse to say, hell yeah, ban it all. It's going to give the kids a heart attack.
No, and I did put a link into the Science Media Center's. They quoted two bona fide experts kind of critiquing the approach taken with this paper. Yep. I mean, I think that I kind of don't. I'm not sure that there's some strategy to be ascertained by focusing on cardiovascular effects. Part of it is they're more acutely able to be measured, and no one is quibbling that, oh, nicotine raises heart rate, nicotine acutely raises blood pressure. Like, these are true, and you can then say which could lead to, like, that's all, like, those are facts. And there's a long history. I don't know if you remember when nicotine patches were first launched as prescription medications in late 1991, early 92. Yep. There was a front page story in the Wall Street Journal about heart attacks in one hospital in Massachusetts. And that led to a big concern about people smoking and wearing nicotine patches that cause heart attacks. Yeah. And even now, I think if we ask most people, if you smoke and wear a nicotine patch, we published on this like 15 years ago, are you at greater risk of having a heart attack? And people will say, of course you are. Blah, 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 blah. And the FDA made the companies go and do all sorts of work, mechanistic, epidemiological, and their conclusion of all that work is, if anything, it seems as though nicotine patch reduces your risk of heart attack. And there's mechanistic reasons to understand why that's the case. And if anything, the effect is probably large enough that you could have gotten a cardiovascular disease prevention claim for the product. But it's the line about a lie makes it around the world before the truth gets its boots on.
Well, that's my complaint here. That's my complaint here, is that not only is this article vastly distorting those effects you're describing, but it's also explicitly in the paper itself. I don't have the excerpt here, but just below this paragraph, it explicitly talks about how the paper is designed to help public policymakers in Europe to outlaw all of these products. That's we don't have to guess about their intention. It's a stated explicit purpose of this paper. So, I mean, I'll ask it straight out. I mean, do you object to this paper and its intentions?
Well, I think, it's easy to criticize the people with whom we disagree, who say, oh, well, you reached a conclusion and then you found the evidence to support it. And that's, we're all vulnerable to that. So embracing that, what would be great is if the European Heart Journal would have invited Dr. Kuja or Dr. Hayek as reviewers on this. And could we see the open peer review where they went back and forth? Like, that could be informative. It's like, I don't think that these authors should be censored or excluded, but I do think that policymakers should have the benefit of an array of viewpoints which don't all subscribe to that same one.
Well, let's talk about a couple other viewpoints that appeared in the JAMA article, because these ones really jumped out at me. They quoted your friend Mitch Zeller and former head of his successor as the head of Center for Tobacco Products, Brian King. And Joe, I must have set an Olympic record for how far I spit my coffee when I read these quotes. They're talking about the regulatory process for PMTAs for pouches, okay? Zeller says, what remains unknowable, given how few details have been shared, is exactly what part of the scientific review process is going to be altered. King says, this can be highly problematic. The scientific integrity of the process is jeopardized. At present, he says, we really don't know that much about the pilot program to determine it. FDA must share that information. The problem with those quotes, Joe, I can't even. It just makes me want to. My china cabinet is in imminent danger of an attack by 5-iron right now. These two guys set it up that way. These two guys concealed the yardstick for years and years and years from the public. These two gentlemen were the ones who hid all that data, refused to give it. They've been excoriated by the Fifth Circuit that we talked about just earlier on that exact basis. And for these two guys to come out and posture as if, oh, yes, sure is a problem that FDA hides the yardstick, just makes me want to strangle a cat. Help, talk me down.
Well, so 190. The Supreme Court,
on wages and white lying?
Yeah. So,
okay.
Like those arguments didn't prevail in the highest court of the land.
Hang on a second.
Right.
No, incorrect. The Supreme Court made no ruling, had said nothing in the opinion about whether and to what extent FDA concealed that data or rigged the process. That's what the Fifth Circuit opinion oral argument just yesterday was all about, saying that the Supreme Court didn't address
it back.
So yes, wages lost 9-0, but it had nothing to do with this part we're talking about, whether FDA has concealed the yardstick that's used to measure the PMTAs.
Well, I think your hypocrisy meter was what was triggered by this. Yeah. I think I understand that. I also think it's a fair point, and especially from their positions with their familiarity with the process, to try to understand what was changed from what they knew. Now, that's a long way. I'm not defending the process. In fact, I'm on record from just earlier in this hour describing my dream that it would work in a more efficient way. But I don't know where we're going here, and I need to go pretty soon. Dang it! Okay. So if you're gonna drill me for something else,
we'll wrap on this. But I want to finish the thought because I think it's so crucial. I mean, I'll ask it a different way. Have you ever seen the meme? We're all trying to find the guy who did this
with the hot dog guy.
With the hot dog guy, yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's what's happening here.
Well,
you see the problem.
I mean, I do see. I think I understand your point, and
they're literally doing the meme.
Well, we should talk about whether it's worth posting a comment to that JAMA article or on PubPeer. Like, if we're all about getting multiple viewpoints in, there are still, I believe, remaining channels to try to do that.
Well, you said before, like, oh, they wouldn't possibly say something like that because they would look so ridiculous and absurd. I mean, Joe, I don't know what to. I'm amazed that it doesn't offend you too. It's absolutely crazy to me.
Yeah, it doesn't. Not in the same way. Not in the same way. I don't.
I mean, let's take it a step further. Even they're talking about pouches, but the yardstick that's used to measure nicotine vaping products, that too, under their tenure, was entirely unknown, never displayed publicly, never held accountable. Zeller set it up that way. King gladly followed suit. They were excoriated by the federal courts all across this fair country, and it remains in place today. And here these two guys are posturing in the premier publication of public health as if, oh, that sure is outrageous the way FDA is hiding the ball. I mean, are you absolutely kidding me?
Yeah,
doesn't offend you?
No, but I'm not easily offended.
Does it strike you as a little hypocritical?
It does feel like if they were back in their prior role, it would be interesting to say, so what would you have done to make this process more efficient?
Yeah.
That would have been a better
question. Could have gone a long way there, couldn't it? Memo to JAMA. All right. Well, that's a good place to wrap. JAMA maybe could model the aspirations of CBS News and Tony DeCopel. So here's hoping. Joe, I feel like we left a lot on the cutting room floor. We didn't even get to John Tierney's Scrooges of the year, which we'll put a link to in the thread. Spoiler alert: it was Bill Gates and Michael Bloomberg. So we've got much more to get to, and we've got our bet for June.
Yeah, we have a bet for June and teaser. Do you want a teaser next week?
Oh yes, you please. You give us the teaser. You set this up.
Well, obviously, many slip twixt the cup and the lip, but the plan for next week is we will be joined by Cliff Douglas of Internecine Warfare 2021 post fame. So same bad time, same bad channel.
I cannot wait for that conversation. It's been 5 years since he put that letter out, and I think that's one of the key things we should talk about, his view looking back on that and where we've come, what's occurred since. And Cliff's one of the, as we both know, friend of the show, one of the deepest thinkers in this space, and who's come a long way himself. I mean, I think it's fair to say that, like Dr. Siegel, Cliff's had, an evolving journey in tobacco control that has incorporated a lot of new evidence and have been very thoughtful and reflective. And I can't say I agree with him on everything, but I do admire the way that he has, adapted his views to incorporate emerging evidence and consumer demand and all those aspects that seems like so many other people in tobacco control disregard.
Agreed.
All right. Well, that's going to be it's going to be a great conversation and an audience booster for sure. In the meantime, Jim McCarthy from American Vapor Manufacturers, thank you for joining us, and thanks as ever for Joe Gitchell for being here. Joe, we'll talk same bat time, same bat channel next Thursday with Cliff Douglas.
Thank you, Jim.
Great. We'll see you then.